B'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Perek Shmini, the 8th chapter in the Rambam's Hilchos Shvuos and the laws of oath in the Sefer HaFlaw, which we continue on the theme of a shvur that we mentioned before, that is Shvuos HaBikodim, the oath of deposits, but specifically where it's not going to exempt the person from payment, and thus the ramifications regarding to this actual shvur. Which Rambam opens up halacha alf regarding an oath when the claim is that of what's called a knas. As the Rambam says, Hagonim sharish shel chaver. Someone steals the ox of his friend, and he slaughters it or he sells it, which in the Torah there's a specific liability of one being liable 5 times the amount of the ox if he goes and he slaughters or he subsequently sells it. And Tvoy balashar v'amalai, so the owner of the ox comes along and says to him, wait a second, ganavti shayri v'tavachta macharti, you stole my ox, you slaughtered it or you sold it. Voy says, yeah, ganavti, I stole it. And that's important where, because he's admitting to the actual principle. He says, but I didn't slaughter it and I didn't sell it. Vinishban, he swears falsely, and then he subsequently admits, he's going to be exempt from the oath of deposits. And the reason for this is as follows. Because had he admitted on his own that he slaughtered or he sold, he would not have been liable to pay for this 4 or 5 times the amount of what he had sold or slaughtered. And the reason they should knas, because it's a penalty, albeit a biblical penalty. Like we'll explain the laws of robbery in the first chapter in the 5th halacha, where the klal is, whenever you pay more than what you damage, or if it's a set amount in the Torah, that is called a knas, which we mentioned in the previous parak in halacha base. So the nimtza comes out zeh, it's like this person's not denying quote unquote monies, because it's not considered monetary law, it's considered penalty law, and if a person would admit, he wouldn't be liable. So the fikr part of Shvuos HaBikodim, therefore is exempt from this oath of deposits. Now, v'chai b'shvuos b'ita, but since Rambam is liable for the oath of utterances, shari nishba sheker shlei tavach, because he swore falsely that he didn't slaughter, but v'tavach really slaughtered. But he wasn't exempting himself. The liability of Shvuos HaBikodim is really he owes the guy the money, and he's denying it, and he swears to that effect. Oh, then he's chayiv for those liabilities of Shvuos HaBikodim. He's not doing it because there's no chayiv of mammon. And as we see, a unique halacha, a unique feature in that of knas is that if he would admit it, he wouldn't be chayiv anyway. So I'm not denying to save myself the money, because had I admitted, I would have been exempt anyway. Halacha beis v'chein noimel chaver. So too, similarly, if someone says to his friend, "Hey, mishorchas avdi, your ox killed my slave," which the Torah sets a certain amount of 30 shkalim as a biblical penalty for no matter who the slave is. And the defendant denies this and he swears to that effect. Or let's say let's say the non-Jewish slave who claimed from his Jewish master, and he said to him, you knocked out my tooth, and you blinded my eye, which that's also a biblical penalty that he has to send him free. And he denies and he swears to that effect and ultimately admits he's like, you're right. In these cases, he's exempt from the liabilities of the Shvuos HaBikodim. And the reason is, had he admitted that he knocked out his tooth or that his ox has killed that person's slave, he would not actually be liable to pay because it's a knas. And the halacha is that moed b'knas is part of you admit in the penalty, actually exempt. So he wasn't really exempt himself with this oath, which again, the whole Shvuos HaBikodim is because he's exempting himself monetarily. So therefore, he's not going to be chayiv for the Shvuos HaBikodim. But again, chayiv b'Shvuos b'ita, he will be liable b'Shvuos b'ita because he swore falsely. Anything that's similar to these types of cases has this type of halacha. Halacha Gimel Rambam continues regarding what happens if there's an oath on a monetary claim or has more than one element. It has a knas element and a mammon element. So it says Rambam, halacha Gimel, if someone claims from his friend, and something that there is a knas element over there, where the person would not have to pay for it if on his own admission, like we just previously explained. Now, but there's also a monetary element, where he would have to pay based on his own admission. And he denies the whole thing, including both the knas part and the moment part, he swears to that effect. Then he's going to be liable for the Shvuos HaBikodim. As Ram says, Kate said also. Let's say he claims to him and he says to him, Anasta, I petita biti, you raped or you seduced my daughter. And he says, Lo yanasti, v'lo petiti, it's not true, I didn't rape, I didn't seduce your daughter, but he swears to that effect. Chai b'Shvuos HaBikodim, he's going to be liable for Shvuos HaBikodim. Why? Although he would not have to pay for the knas, which the Torah sets out a set penalty of 50 shkalim for having done this to a person's daughter. He would not have to pay it based on the zone that Mishneh had he admitted. But he would have to pay for the shame, for the embarrassment, for the damages that he did. That's the moment element. And for that, he's chayv the Shvuos HaBekodin. So the someone says to his friend, Genafti Shari, you stole my ox. Boimer says, Loi Genafti, I didn't steal, but and he swears to that effect, chayv Shvuos HaBekodin, he's liable to Shvuos HaBekodin. Because she'afa pishin mishal kefil by the asayim. Although a thief, when he gets caught, has to pay double the amount of what he had actually stolen, although for that double penalty, he wouldn't have to pay for it had he admitted, so when he's denying, he's not really exempting himself from that. But Misham who's Karen by the Asa, but he would have to pay for the principal when he would admit, comes out that now he's denying a moment entity, which is the principal, and for that he's chayv the Shmir Tzibakad, although for the cable part, it would not make him chayv. Halacha dal. Someone says to his friend, Asisa bi chabur, you inflicted a wound in me. And if someone inflicts a wound in his friend, he's chayiv for what's called the chamish dvarim nezik tzar riper shebes abayshas, which they're all monetary payments, not kanas. Voimer says, Lo sisi, I didn't do anything to you. Or hey meshoich, it says your ox, you killed my ox, which is damages, straight up money, not penalty. Voimer he says, Lo hemis, no, it didn't kill. But when he swears to that effect, chay b'shvuos HaBekodin. Again, he's gonna be liable for Shvuos HaBekodin. She loyed because again, had he admitted, he would have to pay, and now that he's denying it with the oath, that's what's called the Shvuos HaBekodin. Now, Locha Hey, the Rambam continues with a more interesting case regarding it's an oath that will exempt him from liability. And therefore, how this is addressed with Shvuos HaBekodin. Let's say he gives his ox to a custodian that's watching for free. And the ox dies now without the negligence of the watchman, and the shemer would be potter because he is not chayiv for the death of the animal. Now, Tavoy Bamalai, he claims and he says to him, where's my ox that I deposited by you? So Amalai, he doesn't say that it died, which he would be exempt. He tells him, not sure you didn't deposit anything by me at all. Or he tells him something else. He says, you're right, you deposited by me, but it was stolen. But it was lost. Now, these are also claims that he would be exempt from because Shemechin is potter and Geneva Veda. V'nishban, he swears that yes, not true, you didn't deposit, or you deposited but it was lost or stolen. How is the potter Shvuos HaBekodin? He's exempt from the Shvuos HaBekodin. Even though he's lying, really, it wasn't lost or stolen, or that he didn't have a deposit. It's just that the animal died. But the reason why he's exempt is because had he admitted and said the thing as it was, which that it died, he would not have to pay the money because he's watching for free, which is not chayiv if the animal dies. So therefore, again, it's not an oath that's exempting you money. Now, but again, the Rambam keeps on pointing out that you be chayiv shvuos because you're swearing falsely. Anything like this type of situation where even if you're distorting the truth and you're saying something different, but since it's not really exempting you from a monetary payment, so then you're going to be potter from the Shvuos HaBekodin. Halacha vav. Hishol shari l'chaber. Let's say someone lends his ox to his friend. And he claims him and he says to him, Heichen shari shashaltem, and where's the ox that you borrowed from me? Varei asher mes, is the ox dead? Now, a shayil, and this is the same case, but in the opposite, in the inverse. A shayil, unlike the Shemachin, was potter from basically everything. Shayil is basically chayv in everything, including if the animal dies, even on aynis. So did the animal die? So the borrower says, no, nigna by abed, it was stolen or lost. V'nishbaz, and he swears, I swear it was stolen or lost. And he admits then he was lying, he really died. Here also is a potter Shvuos HaBekodin. Here he's going to be exempt from Shvuos HaBekodin. The reason is, because in his denial of the claim, he didn't exempt himself from payment, and that has become in any situation it is, he's going to have to pay anyway. Whether it died like that was the reality, or whether it was stolen or lost the way he was claiming, or Nishbo was taken into captivity, because again, he's the bar, and the bar is chayv in all situations, even those beyond his control, like we can explain in Hilchos in Perek Abalacha Beis. So therefore here, same thing, but in the opposite, he's not exempting himself with this oath, because he's actually chayv anyway. But again, he's going to be liable for Shvuos HaBekodin because he swore falsely. And again, all those are similar to this, which the previous halacha was like, he's not exempting himself because either way he's potter. Here he's not exempting himself because either way he's chayiv. And therefore, again, you weren't swearing on the oath, on the Bekodin, to make yourself potter. As Rambam says in halacha zayin, says this is the rule. Kol she'ein poiter atzmei min tashlumin. Any situation where the person can't exempt himself from payment, only with this denial, with this claim that he's making, when he swears to that effect, and that's Beimin Piatzman, whether if he does it on his own, or whether if the claimant is making him take an oath and he's denying and he's saying, oh, you're right, it's not true, then he's going to be liable for the oath of the deposits, and that's even if he didn't answer amen, and which generally is like you said it yourself, he didn't say the oath from his own mouth. It works what's called mishbin mipiacherim, that if others make him take the oath, that they say the terminology of I am making you swear, and he just denies it, which means to say he's feeding into that, even though he doesn't say amen, or he doesn't say on his own. Either way, again, that would be a liability, since he would be exempting himself from payment on the Shvuos HaBekan. Halacha ches, hagoyim sheich aveir. Someone steals the ox of his friend. And he claims from him, and he says to him, Shari ganavti, you stole my ox. Voimer says, Lo ganavti, that's not true, I didn't steal your ox. No, so mati vetzlach, so what's it doing by you, if you say you didn't steal it? He says, Atzev kadetetli, you deposited by me. Finishman, he swears, you deposited, I didn't steal it, you gave it to me to watch. So chayv b'shvuos habekad. Here he's going to be liable for the shvuos habekad. Why? She'ilo haydish haganava, because had he admitted that he stole it, which he ultimately did admit, and he was lying, had he admitted that he stole it, he would have been liable to pay for the value of the ox in whatever situation is, because a ganav is chayiv and einzin, chayiv in whatever happens to the ox. Now that he said bekadon, who that it was a deposit, now that he's claiming he's a shamer, he was watching it, he exempts himself from if, let's say, it gets lost or gets stolen. Because now after this admission, he says, well, I didn't say it's mine. I know it's yours, but I didn't steal it. You gave it to me to watch it. If right now after this, it would get stolen or lost, he would have been exempt to pay, because Hashem is not having an Aveda, but he's not really, he's really a Ganav. So although either way he's admitting, but it's a different level of admission. The admission that he gave is still an exemption that he's trying to get away monetarily from had he admitted to the real truth of being a Ganav, and therefore that's considered a liability of a Shvuos HaBekan. So if let's say he claims that he says that I didn't steal it, I rented it, which a Seicher is Chayim HaGanev Aveda, but he's still Patra on Einzin, and Benishman he swears the fact that I didn't steal it, I rented it from you. Chayim b'Shvuos HaBekan, he also is Chayim b'Shvuos HaBekan. Although he's still liable in Ganev Aveda, but he's still exempting himself from, let's say, it breaks, or let's say it dies, and which a Ganav is chayiv for, and as a Seicher, as a renter, as someone who is renting, he's going to be Pater. He claims and he says, Hishaltili v'nishba. He says, I didn't steal it, you lent it to me. And he swears, where that's even a greater level of liability, so that almost sounds like neck and neck with that of a Ganav, so he's not really exempting himself, he is. Because he's going to be chayv b'shvuos habekad, and the reason that is shari pata atzim in the misa b'shas malacha. Although generally Shal is chayv on everything a borrower, but he's still exempt if it dies because of the work. Meaning, if you're doing the right type of work with that shovel, whatever it is, and something breaks in it due to the actual work itself, that in the normal way, if it dies because of the work, like when they explain the laws of borrowing, that in Perek Alf Halacha Alf, that one is exempt in such a situation. So that you were still monetarily exempting yourself, which a Ganav would be chayv on that, and therefore that's still a liability to Shvuos HaBekan. Halacha Yud Ram continues regarding an oath that has somewhat of an admission that, yeah, I have to give it back to you, albeit differently. As the Ram says, Lefikach. Therefore, since, like we're saying, the whole reason why one is chayv b'Shvuos HaBekan is because at the end of the day, somewhere along this oath, there's somewhat of a denial of monetary liability or in some form. So Imam, let's say if he says, Lo ganavti, he denies the claim, I didn't steal, but you deposited by me, or you hired me to watch it, or you shall totally, or you lent it to me. But the point is the next word that he's saying. He says, no, so this ox is yours, take it. And he swears to that effect, is that I didn't steal, but here, take it. He's a part of Shvuos HaBekan, he's going to be exempt from Shvuos HaBekan. Why? Because he admitted to the principle, and they didn't exempt themselves with this denial of anything, because in the previous cases, he's still holding on to it. And that was regarding future liabilities where he's not going to be liable. And so his denial is an exemption. And therefore, he's going to be chayv Shvuos HaBekan. Here, he's like, okay, you know what? We're done. You're right. I didn't steal it. You're going to watch it. You know what? You take it back. So he's not exempting himself from anything. He's giving it back, so he's not exempting himself. And regarding future liability, he's not holding on to it. So he tells him, you sold it to me. I didn't steal it, you sold it to me. You know what? And I didn't pay for it yet. If you want, either take the monies, or take your object back. Or he tells him, what do you mean? This thing that I have of yours, you gave it to me as wages for work that I will do for you. If you want, shesalach, I'll do the work for you. Oh, you don't want, or you claim I stole this? Take it and leave. Or let's say, it says, I found your animal that was wandering in the road, and I found it. I didn't know that was yours. You're saying, I stole it? I found this on the street. Now that I know that you're the owner, take it and leave. Or he says, it was running after my cow. And here, take it, it's yours. The Nishbal called Tainam and he swears regarding whatever claim of these claims that we just said. Here also Patam Shvuos because he's going to exempt Shvuos because the reason is he didn't exempt himself from anything. Regarding the fact that it's the guy's thing that he claims that I stole it, here, take it. I'm not exempting myself. And regarding the fact that I'm saying it's some other story, that would only have relevance for the future. But he's not holding out for the future. He's saying, here, it's yours and take it. But like we said, he's going to be liable for Shvuos Bita, again, because he did swear falsely. Halachid Beis, Rambam continues regarding an oath to when there's more than one party involved. Let's say the partners or different entities. If someone was owed money to two partners, and one of them made the claim from him and he denied it to that partner, and he swore, so he's going to be liable for the Shvuos B'Kadon. Ultimately, even though there's more than one partner, he denied money, and that's an exemption, and therefore he's Chai B'Shvuos B'Kadon. Let's say Tvush name. Let's say both of them made the claim from him. And to one of them, he admitted everything. He says, you're right, I owe this all to you. But he said, but I only borrowed from this guy only, and not from this other guy. This other guy, I don't know who he is. The Nishni swears, he's exempt Shvuos B'Kadon. The reason is he didn't exempt himself monetarily at all. He's still going to have to pay the same amount. He's just claiming it doesn't go to that person. That's not an exemption monetarily. But he's going to be liable for Shvuos B'Kadon. Halacha Yigimel, the Rambam continues regarding an oath regarding a denial of a loan. Specifically, let's say someone had an outstanding loan that was in a document. The kafar bab and nishba, and he denies it and he swears to that effect. This is also another exemption of a Shvuos B'Kadon. Why? Because although this is something that is obviously obligated, but when there's written in the document, there's a lien on his property, on his real estate. Now, the so it comes like as if he's denying regarding a claim regarding karka, because as if the guy's claiming the land and he's denying it because any documented loan is a lien on the land. Now, Rabbi already explained in the previous parak halacha beis and halacha gimel, shakleifa b'karka patim Shvuos B'Kadon. If someone denies regarding a real estate, he's exempt from that of an oath of a B'Kadon, which we learn now from the Gzeir Sarkasev from the Pesukim. Because again, he swore falsely. Let's say there was a loan that he owed, but it was not documented in the shtar, but rather it was just with witnesses. And he denies and he swears, then he's going to be liable for Shvuos B'Kadon. And the reason is, because ultimately now with his denial, he exempts himself from having to pay right now when the witnesses didn't come yet. Now, although when the witnesses are going to come, he's going to have to pay. His denial really didn't help anything because we know there's witnesses, the witnesses are going to come. No, but it helped in the moment when he's denying it because the witnesses are not here right now. It's not like a document that's right here, and it's not like that it makes it makes it into like a kfir b'karkois because that's only by shtar and not by witnesses. So he actually did gain something right now because maybe the witnesses are not going to come, maybe they're going to die, maybe they're going to be overseas and not going to come. Maybe they're going to come, but for some reason their testimony is not going to work out, they're going to be refuted or they're not going to be precise. Maybe they're going to become invalidated, they're going to say, hey, you're not kosher l'edus and so on. And therefore, he's going to be chayiv for this denial with an oath, because ultimately he is, in some level of responsibility, exempting himself with his denial from payment, and therefore that qualifies for the Shvuos B'Kadon.